Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by Panthers podcast content creator Ricky Rains in the house. We're going to try to figure this out. I just did Believe in Panthers with Jonathan Stewart. He's the Mr. Positivity when it comes to the Panther fan base. He always looks for that thing that's the positive aspect we can take from it. We're not doing that with Ricky. We're going to go into the nitty gritty. We're going to figure this out. We're going to decide, is this worth it? Can we sustain that? Can we do something besides what we've been doing 3 out of the past 4 games? It's a Panther-centric Tuesday on the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go ahead and hit that intro. Let's hit it.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been #1, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the slaughter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome back into the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. You can catch us every Tuesday, Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. and Saturdays at 11 a.m. on WWBG 1470 a.m. out in Greensboro. You can catch the best of the week on WTOB. I believe they're going to start running it at 6 o'clock on Fridays in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County as well. Tomorrow, a huge show. Media personality B-Dot will be in the house, as well as Mark Pruitt from the Winston-Salem Journal, helping preview the top 3 high school football games in the Triad this upcoming Friday. But before we get all that for the rest of this week, let's get through Tuesday. And I guess some of us are still kind of, I don't know, reeling is the right word to use at this point, Ricky, because I guess we're all kind of used to the punishment of being a Panther fan. The Panthers falling huge to the New England Patriots on the road, 42-13 on Sunday. They will be taking on the Miami Dolphins 1 o'clock this upcoming Sunday on Fox. To start this off, just give me your initial reaction to the first 4 weeks of the season for the Carolina Panthers. Is this have you seen anything that makes you feel like this is salvageable, or are we going through more of the same motions we've gone through the past couple of years, Ricky?
So we are going through some things that we've gone through the past few years, right? But most notably for me, Des, it's the injury bug. I can't understate how much some of these injuries are really showing and affecting the play of this team. Offensive line specifically, right? We knew that when we lost Robert Hunt, that this Panthers team was going to be in for an adjustment period, if you will. Didn't really realize exactly how big that adjustment period might have been and how significant the feel would be. That it is massive. The interior of that offensive line is struggling right now. It is causing Bryce to have to get off of his spot and really work into those second play opportunities that, Dave Canales talked about being a big part of this offense and a big part of Bryce Young's magic. But right now, we're also seeing the departure of Adam Thielen playing a big part in those second play opportunities because he doesn't have the chemistry with his weapons right now to work back to him and to find open space. And that's showing up on the offensive side. Now, on the defensive side, Des, we're getting this like Jekyll and Hyde thing, right? Where fans are getting extremely optimistic and encouraged when they go up against Atlanta and, make Michael Penix Jr. look like he maybe needed an 8th or 9th year in college. But but then we go and we play Drake May and the New England Patriots, who aren't world beaters on offense by any means. They play tough football, but they don't really even play a disciplined brand of football typically when you look back at their first 3 games. And we made them look like a very stout and well-coached and well-behaved football team. And that's difficult for us to swallow as Panthers fans. But there are glimmers, right? There are little bitty silver linings of hope that if you want to, and Des, I'm going to tell you the truth, man, I'm not even in the business, though, anymore of trying to convince somebody to find the silver linings. They're there if you want to find them. But I'm not going to fault anyone that doesn't want to find them because losing, especially in the fashion they're losing, Des, it just can't continue on this way.
Panthers on Tap co-host Ricky Rains in the house here for Carolina Panthers check-in. We're just making sure everybody's okay. Making sure everybody's still doing all
check
right.
on your friends.
You know, it's a quarter of the way through the season, and Bill Polian, a former GM of the Panthers, their first GM, and the one who built those Buffalo Bills teams in the 1990s that made the Super Bowl, he's always said you don't really know a team until after you get past week 4, because at that point you've had 4 games to evaluate. The team's kind of is what they are at that point. You're not going to have a team that just mushrooms out into something different, very rarely like that. And I was talking to Stu just a minute ago, and I was like, I feel like we do 1 and 3 a lot. Like here, it didn't seem anything unusual or normal, but I was mentioning him the 2013 team, Ron Rivera's 3rd year here, where he had punched out a 6-10 season, then a 7-9 season, first 2 years of Cam's career as his quarterback. And they started off 1 and 3 in 2013. Then they won 8 straight and 11 of their last 12, finished 12 and 4. I believe they were the wild card. I think Seattle won the division that year. And we had to go to Seattle and we lost to them in the playoffs. But they turned it around. And that was the kind of the beginning of the good times with Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, that kind of thing. But Ron Rivera is a different kind of person than Dave Canales is. And I want to shift the conversation over to Dave Canales, because now we have over a year of footage and what we've seen and everything else of him. He's not the rah-rah guy. He's not that rah-rah coach that's going to get in your face and throw F-bombs and grab you by the face mask. And that's not him. And we knew that coming in. My question is, do we need somebody like that? Someone that's like a Ron Rivera type? I've always questioned why Dave Tepper was so quick to let Ron Rivera go when he first got here, instead of letting Ron Rivera have an opportunity to rebuild the team himself before letting him go. You just went through all these head coaches, and the guy that actually has a Coach of the Year award on his mantle and the players respected was already in house. And I think he's where is it? Stanford now? I think it is. He's or Cal. I think he went to Cal. I think he's at Cal, or he's the general manager or something for them. What do you think it's a Dave Canales coaches type thing with the players in terms of maybe not being ready immediately in these games to go after it? Or do you think it's the players? Because the players all kind of came out and said that, you know, this is us. He can't catch the ball. He can't run the ball. Like, what are you equating the majority of this blame to for the 1 and 3 start?
Well, you know, you can go all the way back to preseason if you want to. I think that that's a fair place to start when you talk about the approach. You start, you know, whenever you get a slow start on something, right? The question is always, what could we have done to change the trajectory and to get off on a better foot? Well, being prepared seems like a good way, right? What's a great way to be prepared? If you have actual exhibitions of in-game play, right? Communicating through the headsets, getting the plays out, getting to the huddle, that the whole pre-snap operation on offense, on defense, being able to read and react, and having your defensive coordinator working through that with you. All of those things, and dressing, getting ready, having the live crowd, all of those things do matter, right? At least I'm a firm believer of them. I know that that Canales really likes the joint practices. It's a different environment. So I think you could go back to preseason and say maybe change that approach. But coming in and asking about Dave Canales' coaching style, right? It's a really interesting thing to me, Des, that they talk about they want this to be a player-led team. Mm-hmm. They want them to be kind of the ones that hold each other accountable and all of these kinds of things. I can understand that to an extent, but when you do that, I think you need proven winners and veterans in the locker room, right? I love Derek Brown and I love JC Horn to death. I think that they're 2 of our best players, if not the 2 best players on the roster.
Agreed.
But they haven't won meaningful football yet, right? As a team. So having them come in and trying to hold them accountable, I don't know that that's fair to Derek Brown and JC Horn sometimes. I think that the coach needs to come in and instill a winning culture. Part of what I think they like about Canales, I know everyone gets hung up on the quarterback whisperer thing. He was also part of a winning culture in Seattle with Pete Carroll. They won a lot of football. They went to Super Bowls. They won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that I think that they banked on, that Dan Morgan banked on, coming in and instilling that culture. But it seems a little bit of like avoidance for me, for Dave Canales, to say, hey, we want the players to hold each other accountable. We want this to be a player-led team. Why not be a coach-led team, right? Maybe it's because when people don't like confrontations, they avoid them, right? and he's a very happy-go-lucky guy. You know, it's a tell the truth Monday, take action Tuesday, hold your buddy's hand Wednesday type of scenario that they got going on down there in Charlotte. And I don't know that that's going to work. Until you start winning, I don't think you can play the optimistic card every single time. He did take accountability for this game. I appreciate that, saying that. And I do think that JC Horn is right. Dave Canales, Brad Idzik, Ejiro Evero, they cannot go out there, catch the balls, throw the balls, defend the run, defend the pass, and execute their assignments. That is on the players. But the coaches are tasked with getting those players up to speed and ready to do that on Sunday.
And we can also hear nitpick, Dave Canales' play calling that, I wouldn't have ran that play or that kind of thing. It's easy for us to do sitting on our couch instead of on the sideline with, 72,000 people staring at your back while you're trying to call it. And then it doesn't execute correctly and it doesn't work. And it's easy to go, see, you should have picked the other play that I had in my head from Madden or whatever that would have worked or whatever. It's really easy to do that kind of thing. It is Canales' first time play calling from the sideline as the head coach. And some head coaches, a lot of head coaches can't do both. They usually relegate that to somebody else. And they're sitting up in the booth and the head coach can deal with other things like time management and stuff like that. Canales said he is not planning on giving up the play calling duties and that he feels like he's best suited to do that with what they have. And to that, I move over to the next issue, which is this Dave Canales, Bryce Young kind of forced marriage that's occurred. And that's kind of David Tepper's thing for what he's done. One of the reasons why I think they've been so much stop and go is that he's never done a complete clearing of the house. He's always kept something from behind from before. Even when Ron Rivera got let go, I'm pretty sure the GM was still Marty Herney, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah, he kept him in a little bit longer. And then when you brought in another coach, you have the ex-GM that's still there. You fire the GM, you hire him, but the coach didn't have any say in who the GM was. So it's always been this mismatch pairing going on. And Canales came in knowing he was inheriting Bryce Young, someone he did not draft, someone that by all accounts they reviewed him while he was in Tampa, and he said all the right things. Yeah, we worked out Bryce. He looked good, yada, yada, yada. What are you supposed to say after you just took the job and he's your future, basically? You got to pin yourself on him. Watching that game on Sunday against the Patriots, I don't think it was anything the Patriots were doing specifically, but it felt like Canales didn't trust Bryce Young down the field, like throwing it down the field. And if he did take shots down the field, they were always to Ted McMillan, and they were always after like a play kind of just broke down. He was just trying to get it up in the air. How much do you feel Dave Canales actually trusts Bryce Young with him not being his guy? At this point last year, he was getting benched, if I'm not mistaken, really early. So Dave Canales doesn't have that kind of fear in terms of job security when it comes to Bryce Young. They're not attached at the hip. How much do you think he's really, truly invested in Bryce Young now that we've had a year and a quarter to kind of see them together?
I think he's invested in Bryce Young. One of the things that I'll point out, and because I question the same thing, Des, like how much confidence does Dave Canales either A, have in himself or B, have in his offense? Now, I don't want to isolate that to strictly Bryce Young yet, okay? Let me start by saying that when you look at those downfield routes that you're looking for and some of those vertical shots, the first couple of weeks we were taking more of those. I think that we were in the top six of the league in 20-yard attempts and 20-yard completions. We were throwing the ball. We were moving it downfield. But the problem is the interior of that offensive line was not giving any time to protect. And neither was Icky and Taylor Moton. So I don't know that it was in this week, right? Just isolating down to the Patriots game. I don't know that he didn't trust Bryce to throw it downfield. I don't think he trusted the protection to hold up to make that an attainable thing. And when Bryce is trying to force something downfield with a nose tackle in his face, the likelihood of an interception gets way higher, much, much higher, right? And so you're already trying to stop the bleeding. You're already tying that tourniquet as tight as you can. You're getting just drugged right now on the road, right? You are trying everything you can to limit and stop it. I think that was part of it. But that timid behavior, that timid approach, I also think bleeds through to the entire team. And you see that. Now, I do think that the marriage between Dave Canales' offense and what Bryce Young does well, I think that there still is a divide there. There is still some sort of disconnect that is not working. Canales spoke about it during the offseason, that they were having, a collaborative effort with Bryce Young to tailor this playbook, this offensive playbook, and take it to the next level to really work on the things that Bryce Young does well and to get that into position. I don't think that the game flow for 3 out of 4 of these games have allowed them to do even remotely that.
Yeah.
When you get down the way that this team has in 75% of their games, I mean, really think about that. 3 out of 4, I know it's a small sample size, but 75% of the time that they are taking the field, they are behind handedly.
Right. Yeah.
And so that just changes the approach. But there's a fundamental thing there that I'm not sure that Canales is as innovative, is as willing to be risky that Bryce Young, I think, wants to be instinctively and naturally. And I think that there has to be a little bit of a shift in the philosophy to get to that point.
Here's the thing I'm kind of catching from gauging the temperature of Panther fans online after these games, and me and Jonathan Stewart started doing a Believe in Panthers post-game live show on Sundays on Believe's YouTube channel, which I've always stayed away from. I've always told folks I'm the most emotional right after the Panthers play, so I'm usually not even on social media after the game is over. I'm just like, I can't deal with it. And he convinced me, he's like, let's do it this year. I'm like, all right, fine. And so we started doing it. And we usually wait about an hour even after the game. We're not immediately on. We come on like around 5 after we've kind of calmed down and kind of digested what we've seen. Then we come on. So we're a little bit more rational. We can go into it. But I have noticed that with Dave, and everything you said is right, actually. You're one of the few that said that out loud, that, they didn't really try to go downfield because maybe Bryce didn't really have the time. They only had 1 sack on the Panthers offense last Sunday, but they were doing what we did to Atlanta the week before. They just kept putting their paws on him, but just letting him know he was there. He was having to scramble a lot, move around. And I mentioned this earlier too. This is something we as Panther fans need to understand. 2 things. One, Dave Canales is not Sean McVay. They're not. Yes, they are young, attractive head coaches in the National Football League or whatever. They're up and coming. But Sean McVay has the resume, like, to prove that he can do some of the stuff that we're wanting Dave Canales to do. We haven't seen Dave Canales do this yet. This is his 2nd year. He's only 4 games into his 2nd season as a head coach. So you kind of got to let that breathe a little bit. Bryce Young is not. The problem is they traded so much for Bryce Young. The amount they traded for him set an expectation in Panthers fans' minds that he's a certain type of guy, that he's a Cam Newton, he's a Josh Allen, he's a Lamar Jackson. He's a physical specimen that can literally put dudes on his back and carry you to a win. Bryce Young is not that quarterback. He's never been that quarterback. Matter of fact, his entire career of playing football, if you look back to where he's played, and before people start, I'm not hating on Bryce Young, I'm just explaining what this is. Bryce has always had talent around him, no matter where he's been. He was the quarterback at Mater Dei in California. They send off 25 kids to top D1 schools every year. They were the number 1 team in the country when he was their quarterback. He goes from there to Alabama. I mean, come on, man. If I'm not mistaken, Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith were his wide receivers, were they not? Like
Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Jameson Williams. Like he had an offensive line that was the best in college football. He had an Alabama defense. Nick Saban was his coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were able to do things with him. This is the first time in his career where he is probably one of the top 3 players on the field at any given time for his team. He's not surrounded by talent. Bryce Young is not the type of quarterback that can put you on his back and carry you to a win. I think he can be an ultimate game manager. I think he can be like Tom Brady's the outlier because I've called him a game manager, but he can also be a game changer too. He's had different parts of that 20-year career where he was one or the other, or sometimes both. I think he can be like early Tom Brady game manager, where basically he's not killing you. He's going to probably dink and dunk down the field. He'll take some shots where he has them if he has the people to go get it. But for the most part, he's not going to lose the game for you. He's going to play field position, hand the ball off, be smart with it. Bryce can do that, and that's fine. But I think the expectation from the fans is that he needs to be more. He needs to be throwing for 350 yards a game, highlight reel every game, 40 completions a game, no interceptions. Like, there are all these expectations for him. I feel like, or maybe unwarranted, not from his fault, but from what we did to go up to go get him. Do you think that Bryce will ever become a game changer from what you've seen? Because now we've seen going on 3 years of Bryce Young, different quarterback, different line in front of him, different coaches, he's had different scenarios, and he's kind of been the same quarterback throughout. Your thoughts on Bryce Young as we enter week 5 of his year 3 of his career?
I think that there's a connotation that being a game manager is a bad thing, where also being a game manager just insinuates that you have the intelligence on the football field to not put your team in a position to lose, right? And I think that that's a necessary trait for a quarterback. Like, you could talk about Josh Allen, right? Is a physical freak, has all the talent in the world, and an elite football player right now. But when he wasn't a effective game manager and he was putting his team in conflict by taking unnecessary risks and playing hero ball, there were questions about, was he going to work out? right? I mean, this is a conversation that was happening in Buffalo. And then he comes out, he takes to the coaching. He gets a new offensive coordinator that marries the offense to what he does and tells him, hey, look, this is how we want to execute. This is what we need to do. I thought that Bryce Young was starting to show a little bit of that, to be completely honest, towards the end of last season. I really thought that he looked comfortable, that he had a good understanding, that Dave Canales looked comfortable and had a good understanding of what to do, moving that pocket, getting him out in space, the quick pass game. Dinking and dunking also is something that has a negative connotation. And you just talked about it. Tom Brady did it. Drew Brees did it. You know why? Because it's intelligence and it's awareness that when the defense presents you with yardage and an easy, safe play, take it. What's wrong with it, right? Brock Purdy right now is probably the ultimate game manager in the NFL that people like to talk about. And he just got a giant bag for being a game manager. But when he's not on the field and they got Mac Jones out there, there's a noticeable difference. You want a quarterback that can execute your offense. I think that Bryce Young can 100% do the things you're talking about. And there's no issue, in my opinion, with needing talent around you. Do we all want Cam Newton? 100%, man.
Yeah.
He's a 101. He's a Hall of Fame football player, in my opinion, right? It would be great if every single person the Carolina Panthers drafted was a Hall of Fame football player. I would absolutely love
nice.
I wish Luke Kuechly was playing on the defense right now, right?
That'd be great.
But we don't have that. And it's not attainable to think that you're going to get that out of every single player you draft. I think that having talent around Bryce Young is not a negative connotation either. I think that you should want to put the most talent you can around your team. We think that Joe Burrow is a terrific quarterback, right? They gave him Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They keep on drafting playmakers. They try to, bring in running backs that they believe. Now they have struggled with what Carolina has struggled with, and that's offensive line staying healthy, right? That is a huge portion. And last year, for the first year in a long time for the Carolina Panthers, that offensive line stayed pretty intact. Yeah. And that, I think, was the difference. That got the running game going. We're just not seeing any of that in game flow and everything. But Bryce Young, I'm not going to act like he does not have clear limitations as a football player.
That's my point. People are acting like we're going down on him, even though he's like this superhuman kid and just had a bad luck and injuries and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, no, he got drafted number 1. I'm holding him to the standard of the number 1 overall pick. We traded up from number 9 to go get him. And every time I do this, people are like, oh, well, you're just a hater. You're just a hater. No, I hate losing. I'm tired of losing football games. And I'm tired of every Sunday, the Panther fan base, we're all kind of pointing fingers at each other like the Spider-Man meme, where we're all like, well, they did this and they did that, and that's why we lost. We can't blame Bryce. We can't blame Connect. We can't do this. Yes, we can. We can blame them all. We can blame all of them. It's
I think that's the most important aspect of this, though, right? If you're looking to point fingers and place blame on something, just be able to have enough fingers to point at a lot, right? Because it's not something where you can just use your index finger and circle the part of the football team that is the problem. And that's where the schism, I think, is in this fan base, is that for a lot of people, they think that you can point to one or two things and say, this is why this Panthers team is failing. In any given game you watch, you could literally, it's difficult, man, to pinpoint down, right? You want to watch the all 22. Yeah, watch the all 22 every Sunday. Bryce has to make some of these easier on schedule throws. I think that is a fair critique of Bryce Young. I think that he has put throws short. I think that he has overthrown. But then there are even moments, right? Tedero McMillan right now is every fan's favorite player. You go watch the all 22 of Tedero McMillan from Sunday against New England. There's times, man, where they are extremely frustrated with him, noticeably on the field, where he cannot line up pre-snap. Hunter Renfrow and Bryce Young yelling at him to get to where he's supposed to be. And this is on that 4th down play where Bryce, by all accounts, overthrows him.
The 4th and 2?
Yes, the 4th and 2, where he takes the sideline shot down, right? The vertical sideline shot down right towards the end zone.
Oh, no, I'm thinking about another one. It was like later. It was like 42-6 or whatever it was. And it was 4th and 2, and there was a lot of confusion on the line, and it looked like Bryce just gave up.
Right, yeah. That was the one where he dirted it.
It was late. It was late in the game. You're talking about the other one that was earlier.
I'm talking about later. Yeah, I'm talking about when he takes the vertical shot, and it looks like he overthrows Tedero McMillan.
I remember now, yeah.
But if you go and you watch that, watch the way that Tedero McMillan runs in his stem of his route. Very lackadaisical, jogging almost, if you will. That is going to mess up the timing of that concept.
Yep.
And when he starts to break inside a little bit on his route there at the tail end and does not run the boundary, I'm not saying that this is on Tedero McMillan 100%. The throw probably could have been better. But if we want to get really, microscopic with looking at some of these things and what goes wrong in a play, that doesn't help your quarterback, man. And that's a timing thing that is being worked out right now. He's a new player. They are gaining chemistry with each other. It is noticeable right now that Bryce's most trusted target is not in the game. And it is notable right now that Jalen Coker is not on the field, who they, I think, anticipated taking that trusted spot away when Adam Thielen was shipped out. I really think they had a lot of eggs in that basket. Xavier Legette, he hasn't had a great shake to start the season, but they banked a lot on that too. And Bryce Young's not without blame for some of those hiccups, man. Like, he has got to throw better balls to his receivers, but these receivers got to do their job too.
Yeah, it's not, again, it's not a one person fault type thing. So Panther fans have to keep that in mind. And I will say this at this point, and Panther fans, think of this yourself. What did you feel about the Panthers at this point last year compared to this year? And I can't say I do feel better about them from what I've seen, because last year was a stink fest. Like at this point, like we were all throwing our hands up, like trade Bryce away, get rid of Dave Canal, burn the building down. Like we were kind of done with it. And then Andy Dalton came in and made us feel good.
I was going to say, remarkably, we had a week 3 blowout, right? That made us feel good against a not great team, and it started building the faith again, right?
Until Dalton flamed out, and then it came back around again. But I started thinking, I'm like, yeah, I do feel better. They're 1-3, but I do feel better about what they're trying to do. And I went back to each game, and I'm like, well, they were down 10 points or whatever. Well, Jacksonville, they gave them the ball like 3 times in the first 8 minutes, it felt like, and they dug a hole. The next week, they dig a hole again. They're down 10-0 before you can even blink, and it changes everything they're going to call. The one week they didn't do that was Atlanta. Atlanta was doing that, and we took advantage of it. Everyone's feeling good, but it hid the warts. It was kind of like people were talking momentum, and I'm like, you can't have momentum if you're a team that hasn't stacked wins before. Like, you don't know what momentum is. Like, you have to actually do it first and then go. So we're all looking ahead like, oh, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Patriots, we can stack wins here. No one thought about the fact that the week before the Patriots should have beat the Steelers, but they turned the ball over 3 times, and that's why they lost that game. They came in, didn't turn the ball over. They didn't do anything on Sunday where I was like, wow, except for the punt returns. That was the only thing where I was just like, this flipped the whole momentum of the game. Changed everything, like in the span of 10 minutes. Because even the second one, he almost scored on the second one, and the punter tripped him up at the 10-yard line. But that deflated the Panthers, and they played differently from that point on, and it showed. It was almost like they checked out after those 2 plays.
Well, when you go down and you do that breakdown of the way the games start, this week 4 game started exactly how Carolina needed it to start.
Yeah.
They execute their scripted plays so well, man. Like, I know that Dave Canales, if you doubt Dave Canales' just like makeup as a football mind with the X's and O's, watch the scripted series to start the game. Yeah. They're usually very effective, man. Like, he is good game planning going into a game. But when the team, and this is an overall problem, and I believe that Derek Brown spoke on this in the locker room, when the team gets hit in the mouth, they don't know how to react.
They don't know.
Like, that is a culture thing. That is a mentality thing that has to change. But this game specifically for Carolina started how they wanted it to start, started how they needed it to start. They get out to a lead. They miss the extra point. That was the first time where like my spine kind of shivered a little bit.
Yeah, I was like,
that doesn't feel right.
Is that going to affect us later on in the game?
That gives me a real spooky feeling, right? But then they come out and they make a stop. They force the Patriots to go out. They get the ball back. And then all of a sudden, it kind of looks a little wonky. You're wondering about the long 3rd and 10 run call. But again, I think that some of that too, it definitely, and Canales corroborated this too, but you look at that, he's looking for 4th down. He's looking to get 5 or 6 right there and put himself in a playable position because he wanted to keep the foot on the gas. I can understand it to an extent, but if you're going to have the aggressive mentality going into that approach, you might need to keep it even on 4th down, right? Instead of tuck and tail and punting. Of course, in true Panthers fashion, you punt the ball away, they get the touchdown immediately after, and it changes everything. Momentum is real, man. Yeah. And that was where the wheels started falling off. This team needs to figure out the mental makeup to keep those wheels from falling off the very first time they hit a pothole in the road. They got to tighten those lug nuts before they get on the road, before they start making that road trip, tighten everything up so that when you do hit some adversity, you know how to get through it.
Real quick before I get you out of here, defensive coordinator Gio Ivero kind of got a pass last week because of how well the defense played. Looking back on it, that might have been more Atlanta than anything else. Is he on the hot seat? Because I was the 2 weeks prior, I'm like, look, this defense is not looking good. And it's the same thing when I started the show off with you today. He's a carryover. He was part of the Frank Wright regime that came in. He was a David Tepper hire. And when they brought in Canales decided to keep Ejiro Evero, but I'm starting to feel like it was Tepper that decided. It was like, look, you can have this job, but I'm keeping the DC because he's an up-and-comer. I don't want to let him go, blah, blah, blah. But the entire time he's been in charge of the defense, they have not been a traditional Carolina Panthers defense where it's, you don't want to play them, and that's usually where our stars come from, is the defense. The linebackers in particular, that's usually where they're at. I've always said we're not a 3-4 defense. We never have been. We've never had the personnel to completely run it right. And he has shifted away from 3-4 base to more of a kind of a nickel, like a 4-2-5 type thing, where it puts Chow Smith Wade out there more, which I like, which is fine. We still don't have the linebackers to really run that properly. Trevin Wallace has flashed briefly here and there. Rosenblum, he every once in a while you see him kind of at the end of a play and running behind trying to tackle somebody, but he hasn't been as advertised being that 100 tackle guy that you expect to be in on everything, getting 10 tackles a game. We don't have the linebackers in the middle of our defense to really do Panther football. Do you think Ejiro Evero, if this tracks out the way we've gone this first quarter of the season, do you think he's the defensive coordinator here next year? Or does he make it through the season? Let me put it that way.
I would be shocked to see any mid-season changes personally, right? I think that they knew that this was a interview process, essentially a year-long interview process for the entire staff and a lot of the player personnel that's on this roster. I think this was a show me type of season. So far, the results aren't great. They're pretty mixed though, just because of that week 3 and then that week 2 second half showing. It's just difficult to get a really great gauge. But like you said, after 4 weeks of a football season, it shouldn't be that difficult to have a gauge on where your football team is. Defensively, you kind of nailed it there, Des, with the 3-4 base not exactly even being the defense that they run. They're in nickel such a large percentage of the time in nickel personnel. Now, this week against the Patriots, what was really difficult for us, we saw dime personnel, right, against the Falcons and the Cardinals a lot more than we had seen. Evero was starting to mix up the fronts. He was starting to throw some different blitz looks. He was even showing some simulated pressures. Yeah. Against the Falcons, we ran dime personnel out there 18.5% of the game. That was the most in the NFL. And it started working for us because we had Trayvon Merrick playing that dime backer to get our weakness of the defense off the field. That was our best personnel package. Yeah. But we were able to get into those looks as often as we were against the Falcons because we dictated that game flow. What happened on this Sunday is that the New England Patriots dictated the game flow to us. We ran 3 plays out of dime personnel on Sunday against the Patriots. That is a big issue because that is our best personnel. And I think Evero knows that. I think he's very clear on that. And that's why he keeps trying to get into those looks. When you ask Roseboom to be on the field as often as you're asking him to be, it's difficult, man. And I hate to put the blame on single players and things like that, because obviously they're better at football than I ever was and I ever will be. So who am I to look down and say anything about these NFL football players? But when you watch the tape, you could find deficiencies, and our linebacker core has been a deficiency. The inability to get pressure on the quarterback has been a giant deficiency. So Evero, it is on him. He has to get these guys in the right position. When he has the game flow at his bedside, right? He is able to put a good, competent defensive plan out there, but we don't have the personnel to just make up for game flow.
And I can understand him thinking dime is probably the best thing for his unit, because his secondary's probably got the best players. That's probably the best unit out of the defense. So you want as many of them on the field as possible. The problem with dime is that you're leaving that middle linebacker by himself in the middle of the field. And unless he's Luke Kuechly or John Beeson or Dan Morgan, something like that can actually cover Thomas Davis, then you're kind of leaving the middle open for 8-yard gashes in the run game like all day. And that's literally that's the problem they're having, because running backs are getting past the first line immediately, not getting touched. And if you're in dime, you've got Trevin Wallace or Rosenblum somewhere wandering around, either trying to cover somebody or watching the line. Also, they get past one guy, everybody else is downfield. Yeah, it opens up the run game for whoever you're playing against, and it just makes them look like world beaters. We say all this to say that we think that there's some positivity with the Carolina Panthers going forward. I can't say that they should look at a favorable schedule going forward on any game at this point, because any win for the Panthers is kind of like good, we did it. We're not on the road in the next 2 weeks, which is good, because I think Bryce has only won 2 games on the road in his career or something like that. So we got Miami at home, 1:00 p.m. on Fox on Sunday. Next week they take on the Dallas Cowboys at home, who are 1-2-1 themselves, that might be a shootout, because I can see that easily turning, because the Cowboys don't really have a defense at all,
Right.
but they can score 40 points on anybody. So
Yep.
you got that there, and then you got the 0-4 Jets the week after that on the road. So the schedule's still okay. The Buffalo Bills loom somewhere after that, and then it gets a little tougher after that as we start getting the division play. So you got to play Tampa twice. Atlanta's going to be wanting to see us when we see them at home. What they're home. I don't even know what the Saints are doing. So but I can't count that as a win. I can't count the Saints as a win.
Yeah. Yep.
So for all that, I say Panther fans, just sit tight. Let's see what they're doing. Don't forget, Dave Canales is literally his 21st game that he has coached as a head coach. They're still figuring stuff out. They're missing multiple people on the offensive line early. Robert Hunt was probably the leader of that offensive line. He's no longer there. He's out for the season pretty much. And really looking back on the game on Sunday, it kind of fell apart for the Panthers when Chandler Zavala went out early, because he had been a starter last year on that line. As soon as he went out, it was like Bryce didn't really trust what was in front of him anymore, and things started getting rushed, and the Patriots started getting back there. And I don't know if I don't know if that's going to change. But
the problem is Zavala had a really bad game.
He did.
Like a really bad game. And then they go to Brandon Walton fresh off the practice squad elevation. That was a curious move for the sake of saving Brady Christensen in case anything else bad happened. the thought process, you got to get out of your own way sometimes. And again, you spoke on it, Des. He's a young coach. He's figuring this out his first time as a head coach. But sometimes, man, don't be so cute, right? Yes. Just do the thing that makes the most sense and that makes you the better football team at that moment when you are facing peril. Try to stop it. Get in there and make an adjustment. Brady Christensen hopefully sees that right guard position going forward right now, because I thought when he came in, he clearly showed that he was better than Zavala or Walton. I don't understand how he was so far down.
They forgot he was there.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, oh, Brady, you're still in the team. Get out of there.
Yeah, get in there, man. Like, do something. But the upcoming schedule, if there is a chance to right the ship, it's these 3 games coming up. And this will sort out are we complete, dog food of a football team, or do we have a little bit of something in us that we could try to stack a couple of wins? If you come out of this and you're 3-4 out of this stretch, look, man, the NFC South isn't necessarily world beaters, right? You can still put something together, man. We've seen weirder things happen in sports, but you have to stay in it, and you have to prove that you're competent and that you can play against bad teams and that you can beat bad teams. Yeah. Because if you get dog walked in any of these games, we got to start having conversations about who's going to be here.
Conversations we don't want to have at that point too. Yeah, so we'll see. Again, Panthers taking on the Miami Dolphins, who are without Tyreek Hill. Those that don't know that got up this morning and didn't watch the game last night, Tyreek Hill suffered a dislocated left knee, torn ACL reported this morning by Adam Schefter, multiple ligament tears in his knee, out for the season, maybe out for most of 2026. It might affect his career. So we're trying to keep an eye on that injury, and hopefully he's able to mend up and get back on the playing field. So the Dolphins will be coming into this game wounded on the road. And we'll just kind of see what the Panthers dream up here, because I did feel our secondary matched up well to them this year as opposed to last year when we saw them, and it snowballed into a blowout win for the Dolphins in the second half. So hopefully that don't happen. They just look faster than us.
Well, they're very fast, and we're going to have to bank on, or really hope, pray, if you will, if you're a praying person, that DJ Wanham and Pat Jones, at least one of the two, are healthy. That is a critical part. You cannot have your edge-setting developmental 26-year-old player not be able to set the edge the way that we were exposed this past week against the Patriots with their misdirection and their motion. That is something that the Miami Dolphins will make us look absolutely foolish on if we trot that same personnel out there. So fingers crossed that those guys get healthy. They're a big part of this team.
We're gonna go and get out of here. Everybody get back to your cubicles, get back to work. We'll be back tomorrow with a new episode. Again, B-Dot will be in the house doing Sports Buffet. We'll talk a little NFL, a little college football. Everybody knows he's the sixth man of Carolina basketball. We'll actually start talking some hoops and talk about the Carolina basketball team. And Winston Journal prep writer Mark Pruitt will be in to preview his top 3 games of the week in the Triad for high school football on Friday. Again, we're your home for high school football live sports here. East Forsyth taking on West Forsyth. It's our game of the week. It's on WTOB Friday night. I'll be in the house in Clemens along with Rod Funderburk. and Grimsley taking on Verena out of Virginia, one of the top teams in the state of Virginia, taking on the top team in the state of North Carolina, Grimsley. We got that one for you too. WCOG in Greensboro, Chase Williams and Jeff Marson will be on the call there. We'll give you some more information about that later on in the week. You guys go ahead and get back for lunch. Appreciate Ricky Raines coming in. Check out his pod. He's on multiple pods, but Panthers on Tap's your main one.
Yes,
He co-hosts that each week. Great info there. Go check him out. Go follow him online at right there behind him, Ricky Bobody. So definitely follow him there for the latest. And we will see you guys tomorrow here on the Desmond Johnson Show live on Tobacco Road.